Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm so excited because today we're making Ezekiel bread and I'm so excited. Alright, so before I actually make my Ezekiel mix, I want to refresh our memories on the actual scripture where we get this mixture from and what it says. It says, "Take thou also into thee wheat and barley and beans and lentils and millet and fitches, and put them in one vessel, and make thee bread thereof according to the number of days, the days that thou shalt lie upon thy side. 390 days shalt thou eat thereof." He goes a little further and tells him by weight how much water to drink, how much of this bread to eat. And then it goes into more of what this symbolizes. But I want you to take note that he didn't say how much wheat, how much barley, how much beans, how much lentils and millet. So really we use our imagination when we make Ezekiel mix, but you do have the basic ingredients. So another thing is fitches. He said to take the beans, the lentils, the millet, and fitches. So I did some research on this. Fitches is actually the flower from the nutmeg plant. And so I am going to be actually shaving a little nutmeg into my flour mixture because I want to keep it just as close as possible. Now, another thing that I hear about Ezekiel bread is that it's heavy and that it's a very dense bread. And so I'm going to customize my mixture to hopefully yield a much lighter loaf of bread that's still just as healthy and just as delicious. So let's get started adding our beans and millet and all the things to a big bowl. And I'm going to use a big bag because I'm going to make quite a bit of it, and that way I have it on hand for whenever I want it. So I'm going to get all of my supplies together and we're going to mix up my customized mix of Ezekiel bread mix. So let's get started on this. Alright, so before I put all this together, I do want to tell you what I'm using. I'm using 2 ancient wheats, spelt and kamut. I'm using hard white wheat instead of hard red because I want to try to get a really light loaf that's still very nutritious, but you know, I just want it to turn out good. So I went ahead and labeled my bag Ezekiel, and I have 2 cups of hard white and 2 cups of kamut in here already. Now I'm going to add 2 cups of spelt. I accidentally picked up the half cup, so I'm going to do 4 of those. Now we're going to add some different grains. The first is going to be millet. So this is the millet that I buy. It's Anthony's organic whole millet. And I'm going to do half a cup of the millet. Now you could put this in a big container, glass container or something like that, but I just decided to put it in here. Now we're going to do the barley. This is a company that I've been ordering from a lot, Be Still Farms. They have a lot of different grains. I've really been enjoying their products, so I'm going to do half a cup of barley. There we go. Now we're going to move on to beans. I'm going to do 2 tablespoons of each. Every recipe that you see will give you maybe different types of beans. I'm just using what I have on hand. So I'm doing 2 tablespoons of chickpeas or garbanzo beans. I love garbanzo flour. It is light and makes the best pancakes. I'll have to link it down below. I have a pancake recipe using garbanzo bean flour. So good. Now we're going to use some brown lentils. And I'm going to do 2 tablespoons of those. And then I'm going to use some pinto beans. I don't use a lot of pinto beans in my kitchen. I mean, we like them, but I tend to go for Great Northern beans, or I actually wrote this recipe out to use Great Northern beans, but I'm out. So we're just going to use pinto beans. But you can use whatever you have on hand. Don't look at an Ezekiel mix recipe as I have to do it exactly what it says. Use what you have on hand, and as long as you have the basic idea of wheat, barley, millet, and beans and lentils, it'll be just fine. Now I'm just going to massage this and get everything mixed together. And now we just need to mill this up and make a loaf of bread. I am so excited for this. Alright, so I'm going to mill up 3 cups of this mixture just to have enough flour for my bread. If I have any left over, I'll put it in the freezer, and then when I'm ready to make something else, I'll add it to what I grind up for that recipe. Now, I have a few people have asked me how loud these grain mills are. They're this loud. I wear earmuffs when I use them, so just trying to protect my hearing, but I am going to go ahead and grind up 3 cups of this mix. So there's the flour. It's very light, beautiful flour. Now let's make the bread. Okay, for the bread, this is going to make 1 loaf. It's a 1 pound loaf, or you can use a 1 pound loaf pan is what I'm using, but we're going to add 1 cup of hot water around 110, 115 degrees. Sorry, I left this. 1/4 cup of honey and 1/4 cup of olive oil. I'm doing a teaspoon of salt. I'm going to add some lecithin, but you don't have to. I get questions about this. It's a fat emulsifier. It evenly spreads the fats throughout the bread, so you get a really nice soft and even loaf of bread, but it's totally optional. I'm going to use about half a tablespoon, or yeah, half a tablespoon. Alright, so in staying with what it said about fitches, I am going to grate some nutmeg. Not a lot, but I feel like since it says that, I want to add it into the recipe. We absolutely love nutmeg. I keep it on hand all the time, so it'll be fine with us. It'll probably give it a really nutty, almost spicy flavor, which will be just fine. But I didn't put too much, so. Alright, so now I'm going to add 2 cups of my Ezekiel flour. It's so light and fluffy. And then I'm just going to mix this up before adding my yeast. Alright, now I'm going to add my yeast. I'm going to do 2½ teaspoons sprinkled on top of this mixture. So while this is mixing on speed 2, I have people ask me what is the speed that I need on my Nutrimill mixer. It is speed 2. I'm going to start adding I'm going to start adding the flour like a half a cup at a time. We're going for 3 to 3½ could be even up to 4 depending on the humidity in your home and things like that, but we're going to do it about half a cup at a time until it starts pulling away from the sides of the mixing bowl. I want to show you what this dough looks like when I'm finished adding flour. You can see that it's away from the bowl. It's sticky though, but as you knead this for like 10 minutes, it will come together. And the problem with a lot of bread baking is adding too much flour. You just want to add enough until you've got a dough mass, and then let it knead until it all comes together. This is the perfect time to address a question I get. You see how it became really sticky again? Don't add more flour. That's fine. It will all come together. in about 10-12 minutes, and I'll show you when it's finished kneading. But if it looks like this, don't continue to add flour, because your loaf will be heavy, it will be dense, and it just won't be as fluffy and soft inside. So as you can see, that dough comes together if you just give it some time kneading in the mixer. I have learned this the hard way. It's something that I have actually figured out just kind of recently, but it works. It makes such a better loaf of bread if you don't just keep adding flour to it. So what I'm going to do is get this dough out and put it in a lightly greased bowl. I'm going to cover it and just let it double in size. So my house is kind of cool right now, but we do have a low fire in our wood stove because it's just a little bit chilly and rainy here today. So I'm going to take my bowl and just sit it somewhere near the wood stove to let it proof. But if you don't have a place like that, you can turn the light on in your oven with the oven off and put it in there, and it'll rise, or on top of a dryer that's going, or on top of your refrigerator. It's getting that time of the year where it's a little chillier inside, takes a little bit longer for things to rise, so just a couple of tips for that. But I'm going to get this dough in my bowl and let it rise. Now this is a bit sticky, so I am going to spritz my hands with some olive oil because I want to make sure it doesn't stick to my hands too much. This is a slack dough. It is not like a stiff bread dough. It's more moist, but I want that because I want this loaf to be light and airy and not the heavy loaves that I keep hearing about with the Ezekiel bread. I want you to see that. See how slack it is? But if you put just a little bit of oil on your hands, you can get it shaped into a ball and then let it rise. So this will take probably at least an hour in my house right now, maybe even just a little bit longer. Just want to look at it and make sure it gets really poofy and big, and then we'll move on to putting it in the loaf pan. Also, really quick, I wanted to let you know that when you look at the recipe that I made for this, there is the option to add an egg. I usually do this, but our chickens are not laying eggs quite as much as they have been, so I'm just a little more stingy with them right now. So I'm only going at this with just the lecithin, and that's also optional. So you can actually make this with just the flour, the water, the honey, the olive oil, and salt, and it will still be absolutely delicious, I'm sure, and turn out great. So just wanted to give that as a quick note because you're going to see that on the blog post, and I want to tell you why I left it out. All right, my dough has doubled in size, and I'm going to punch it down. And then I'm just going to shape it and put it in this loaf pan that is already sprayed with some olive oil. Just want to flatten it out. I shape my bread different almost every time I make bread, so the big thing is to get the air bubbles out. Then I just like to start rolling it up, kind of tucking the edges as I go. Get my should have got my silicone mat, but I didn't. So it's going to be a little, need to be smoothed out a little on the top. That's fine. I'm just going to kind of straighten it up a little. Make sure it's smooth on the top. And I'm going to do my little pound it, and pound it, and now we're going to go into the loaf pan. I'm going to just kind of spread it out a little, put the cover back on. I like to pull the cover up so that it doesn't stick to the dough. Now once this hits getting close to the top of the pan, I'll preheat my oven to 350 degrees. This could take up to an hour, so I'm just going to kind of keep an eye on it. The first rise took about an hour and a half, So we'll see how it goes. It's a rainy day, and we do have a fire in the wood stove, so I think that's why I'm getting kind of a good, quicker rise today. But yeah, we'll just check on this in about 30 minutes, and we'll just go from there, and hopefully this rises really well and makes a beautiful, lofty loaf of Ezekiel bread. All right, it took about 30 minutes, and this bread has, I hope you can see it, has reached over the top of the pan. My oven has been preheated to 350 degrees. I'm going to bake this for about 30 to 35 minutes. The reason that I say that, and a lot of recipes say 30 to 35, is some people's ovens run hotter, some people's run cooler, but 35 minutes is a good amount of time to make sure that it's done inside. If you want to make sure, then it needs to be at least 195 degrees inside up to 205 degrees inside. You can use one of these instant read thermometers and check it, but about 30 to 35 minutes should get the job done. Alright, so this bread looks so good. It doesn't look dense. It looks soft. I am going to cut a little piece off of it and give it a try, because I have had the Ezekiel bread from the store. I've never had homemade. So let's see what it tastes like. Pretty exciting. Lots of different ingredients in here. Okay, it's kind of sweet, and not like just from honey. It's in a good way. I like this a lot better than the store-bought one. There's just a ton of flavor. It's really comparable, I think, to my other sandwich bread, but you can just tell there's the more nuttiness and more flavors from the beans and the barley and millet. It's quite delicious. The crust is crisp on the bottom. It's really good. I'm going to try this mix for pancakes and muffins. I want to see what the difference is, so I'll be sharing that with you all as we go, but I'm really liking this. This is a whole new flavor for me for bread, but it's so good. So full of fiber, full of good fats, protein, all the things, and so delicious. So I hope you all will give this a try. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me today as I finally jumped in and did Ezekiel bread. Of course, I put my little spin on it, but it is absolutely delicious. It is not dense. It is soft. It is full of flavor, and I hope you'll give it a try. I am going to be leaving the printable recipe link in the description box below, and that's for this bread. But in that blog post, in the body of the blog post, is the mix that I used to make it. You can use your imagination, of course, but that's just the one that I used, and the bread turned out incredible. So I hope you'll give it a try. And if you do, please comment and let me know so that I can know that it worked out for you as well. All right, guys, well, that's all I have for you today, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you enjoy videos on cooking from scratch, gardening, food preservation, and homesteading, then please consider hitting that subscribe button down below. I make at least 2 new videos a week and sure would like to have you here. We will see you on the next video.